This is our first in a series of videos to talk about allergies and how they work. And basically, we're just going to play this by ear. So if you want to know more, if you want to get into nitty gritty, we could definitely do that. But I'm going to start off basically at a pace where I think everyone can kind of chime in, pick up what they want to know. You know, the key here is to basically make this as easy and as efficient as possible. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on peripheral topics that we really don't need. I mean, you need them for immunology, but you don't need them to sort of get to the points that we want to make. Okay? It's nice to have all the details, but at the same time, I think what's more important is to have something that's sort of meaningful and lasting and something that's easy to retain so you kind of know where everything fits together. Before we can get to good stuff, I think it is important to have some foundational knowledge. So if you're comfortable with innate immunity, adaptive immunity, and B cells in particular, then you can definitely skip this video. But if you're not, or it's been a while, then I definitely think we should start from here and then sort of work our way forward. Okay? So first things first, when you think of our immune system, okay, so we're thinking about defense for our body, right? So one way to think of it is you have the innate immune system versus adaptive. So there's a difference here between innate immunity, or the innate immune system, and adaptive immunity, or the adaptive immune system. Okay? There are many different ways to talk about this. I want to keep this as simple as possible. So one way to think about it is this. I mean, innate means from birth. It's a little bit of misnomer in the sense that both of these guys are kind of present all the time, right? They're present from birth. But it's a matter of when you activate them. So this guy's pretty much doing its thing all the time. And even though this guy's on alert, right, different parts of it really won't be activated unless you run into specific guys you're meant to fight. Okay? So in that sense, it's better to think of this as sort of general, where with innate immunity, basically anything that doesn't belong, we're going to attack. So it's pretty general. Okay? But adaptive, and this is really where we're going to focus our attention, adaptive is very specific. Okay? And I think that's one of the best ways of sort of delineating these two. So this guy is general, attacking anything that doesn't belong, and this guy is much more specific. To give you examples of this, you know, in some sense you can think of hair, nails, right? Skin, and of course snot. Okay, so stuff like this. This is constantly active, right? It doesn't discriminate. Snot will catch whatever it wants to catch. It's not going to be very picky. Okay, maybe we're not going to go too far into this, but maybe another major thing to mention are things called phagocytes. So this is from the Greek, literally to eat. Phagocytes are types of cells that basically go around, they see something that doesn't belong, and they literally ingest them. Okay, they ingest and devour them. So inside of here, common phagocytes that I'll talk about today are macrophages. And again, macro means big. Here with this, the phage part, we're talking about eating. So these are big eaters. So big guys that go around gobbling stuff up. And then neutrophils. This guy gets his name from how we identify him with staining, but don't worry about that for the moment. And then number three, there's cells called dendritic cells. My point is not to put in a lot of extra info. So if you're comfortable with this, that's great. But if not, the main thing to remember is stuff that's involved in innate immunity, it's not that specific. It just sees something that doesn't belong and it goes after it. Okay? So let's make a term right here. So things that don't belong, that are foreign to our body, we're going to call pathogens. Basically things that can cause disease. Okay? That's what I really mean. So pathogens will be things that can cause disease. So when these things see pathogens, right? For example, your nails, your skin, etc., right? It doesn't discriminate. It tries to keep all that stuff out. It's not very picky, okay? And these guys, okay, I'm just mentioning names now. It's not important to remember them hardcore. Just the thinking here is that you have a bunch of cells that roam around. If they see something that doesn't belong, they go and they gobble it up, okay? That is it, okay? There's much more to this, but we don't need it. For the moment, what I want to focus on is really this. Because when we get into allergies, we need to talk about antibodies, and really antibodies come from B cells. So 5-second recap here. We have the innate, which is like skin, nails, snot, all that stuff, mucus, right? Okay. It's not very specific. It is general. And anything that can cause disease, right? So pathogens. So guys that can cause bad things, these things in general will attack them, okay? Meaning they're not that picky. So your skin doesn't care. If certain bacteria don't belong, it's not that picky. It tries to filter all of them out as best it can, okay? But over here, with the adaptive, and that's what we're going to be concerned with, adaptive immunity, okay? It battles pathogens in a very specific way. Okay. Adaptive immunity is key. Of course, the big theme here is it is very specific. But when you talk about people getting vaccinated and things like that, we are referring to this guy. So it's very specific, it's powerful, right? And it remembers. So that's a key thing. Okay. So the major players here for adaptive immunity are guys that are called lymphocytes. And we'll talk about this later, but you have your circulatory system, you have your lymphatic system. These guys can actually be found in both. Two major lymphocytes are B cells. That's what we really want to remember. B cells and T cells. If you really want to explain this, we kind of need to understand both. And you'll see that both of them have relevance to allergies, but we're going to focus on today are B cells. Okay? By the way, just a quick note. All the cells I'm going to talk about today, they are white blood cells. Cells that defend your body, right? So WBCs, right? Okay, of course, another name for that are leukocytes. Now, I won't use these terms that much today, but it's just good because these terms pop up. So I'm going to mention them as we go along. We're concerned about white blood cells. In particular, we're concerned about a class called lymphocytes. And we're talking about adaptive immunity, right? Which is pretty specific. The major players here are going to be B cells and T cells. So a little bit about them. These guys, just like pretty much every white blood cell, right? They're born in the bone marrow. But their names actually come from not where they're born, but where they grow up. So where do they grow up or mature? Obviously bone marrow, B for bone marrow, okay? But for T cells, right, they grow up in bone marrow, but they mature in the thymus. And the thymus is sort of in your upper chest. Basically, like if you have a heart right here, the thymus sits right on top, more or less, okay? All right, so while both are super important, the point of this video is to focus on this. Because when we start talking more in detail and we start talking about allergic responses, we're looking at antibodies. I'll write that up in a sec, okay? And we're talking about a specific class called IgE, okay? And with that, if you want to talk about that, we've got to talk about B cells, okay? All right. So here's our quick outline. Without going into the details, more or less, the way to think about it is you have tons and tons of different B cells hanging out, okay? So they were born in your bone marrow, they grow up in the bone marrow, and now they're just hanging out throughout your body. So these B cells are very specific. So if you envision them kind of like this, obviously we're simplifying this, hat here, hat there, maybe heart, maybe baseball cap. Right. So you got all these different B cells hanging out, okay? And now let's say you have a pathogen, like a bacterium or something like that. So the pathogen is hanging out doing its thing, but there are little markers on the pathogen that we can use to identify them, okay? So pathogens are things that possibly could cause disease. But it's not just pathogens, right? Cells that you run into. Everybody's got little markers across them, and sometimes we can identify what they are based on the marker, okay? Whether they belong to you, they don't, et cetera, okay? So let's pretend, keeping it very mellow, that this pathogen basically has this heart marker, okay? Now, if you're a little bit more experienced and you're thinking about what's going on here, I'm going to keep it very simple. But of course, the truth is you're specific to something called an epitope. We're not going to go into that right now. So in this first video, you can think of it this way. These markers are called antigens, okay? And really, the name derives from it generates antibodies. So antigens are these markers that different cells have, right? And you can use the antigen to identify what it is. Or at least you can use it to identify does it belong to you or does it not. So these guys are very specific. They're looking for particular antigens, okay? So let's say baseball cap here comes along, sees this. It's looking for baseball cap, but the antigen here is really the heart antigen that doesn't line up. So this guy's just going to fly on by. So now let's say elf hat here comes along, sees that, doesn't line up, it just flies on by. So nothing's going to happen. But now the interesting part. So let's say heart here moves along, and it sees the antigen it's meant to respond to. Once that happens, this guy's going to be activated and start to do its thing. Okay? Now, I'm going to simplify it a little bit. Believe it or not, in order for this to go into full gear, you do need help from T cells. So that's why I mentioned B cells and T cells work together. But if we streamline this, the idea is you're going to fight this guy. If you're going to fight this guy, he may have lots of friends along. So you don't want to fight him by yourself. You want friends as well. So the first thing you do is make copies of yourself. So this process is called cloning. So what's going to happen is this guy's going to run along and he's going to start to clone, make copies of himself so he can fight this. Okay? And more or less, the way you can think about it is that when it's time for you to fight, you need to make guys that will actually do the fighting. We'll call those cells effector cells. And as a mnemonic, you can think they will affect the defense. Okay? Most of these guys that will go and do the fighting, they're going to do the fighting in the short term. They're going to take care of this problem, and then that's it. We don't need them anymore. However, some of these guys have a second purpose, and that is to remember this pathogen. The truth is, if you're in a certain environment and you run into this pathogen once, odds are you're probably going to run into this pathogen again, right? So you want to be ready for next time. So you literally want some cells to remember for next time. Okay. Again, keeping it pretty simple. What I want to do is I just want to make a note that there are some cells that remember for next time. That will come up later. For the moment, we just want to battle this guy. So if you want to battle this guy, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to make guys that fight this stuff. You have these B cells, right? They're going to change. They're going to differentiate into guys that will do the fighting. And those are typically what are called plasma cells. So just a quick recap. You spotted the guy you're meant to fight. You don't want to fight alone, so you replicate. You copy yourself. So you start cloning. Some of those clones are special. They're going to remember for next time. And that actually plays into something called primary and secondary response. We might talk a little bit about that because when people say you're immune to something, right, they're typically talking about secondary response. But for the moment, let's focus on these effectors. Okay, so these plasma cells are going to fight. But how are you going to fight this guy? The truth is, a lot of times the innate system is going to help you out. So those cells that we talked about, for example, macrophages that go around and gobble guys up, they're actually going to do a lot of the killing. Okay? But the power of these plasma cells is they produce something called antibodies. Okay? Now, in a nutshell, what antibodies are meant to do is they are to mark cells for death. Basically, you can think of it this way. Once these guys produce antibodies, these antibodies will mark this thing, and it will tell parts of your innate immune system, hey, go kill this guy. And since these guys are very specific, they can hone in on their target, they can mark it like this, and they can tell parts of your innate system to basically gobble this up, take care of it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how antibodies work, and then primary and secondary response.